Hey guys, so today we're going to start off with some context to the gospel reading. So, before Jesus is asked the question about the greatest commandment, he's asked the question about paying taxes to the emperor, which was last week's gospel, if I'm correct, and if I remember correctly. And then after that, they asked him a question about the woman who married and then her husband died and then she married her brother and then he died and so on and so on. So at the resurrection, who would be her husband, who would be joined together by, that. And then after that is when they ask him the third question, which is about the greatest commandment. And after they ask him this question, then Jesus asked them a question about the Son of Man, the Messiah, being the son of David. And then it kind of shuts them up because they don't know how to answer, and he leaves them alone. So the question in today's gospel, of course, is the question about which is the greatest commandment. And so Jesus says back to them, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. The second is like it. You shall love you shall love your neighbor as yourself." The whole law and the prophets depend on these two commandments. So I think sometimes we kind of lose the whole law part, because obviously it's extremely important about, the first and second commandment, what exactly they are. But obviously anything that Jesus said wasn't just, throw in words to kind of fill in the silence, or, make sure he didn't look awkward and just tag something on to the end of something, but it was important. And so I think if you look back to Jewish culture, obviously all of the laws given to them by God in the Torah were extremely important and were to be held at an equal value, because who is to say, like, well, I know which commandment is better than the other. And so it's not just that, though, it's the prophets as well that depend on these two commandments. And so at first when I heard that, I was like, so how exactly did the prophets depend on these commandments? But if you think about the prophets, their whole purpose was to preach the coming of the Messiah. If you think about Isaiah and how many references there are which are in Old Testament, of course, that reference to something that happens in Jesus' life. There are so many comparisons that we can draw. And so if you use that to put a new meaning into what Jesus is saying, it's saying that the prophets, Jesus Christ, the coming of the Savior, is dependent on love, dependent on loving God and loving your neighbor. And so this is the whole of what Jesus is preaching: the unity, sacrifice, forgiveness. Every single virtue, every single good thing falls under the category of love. And so it's important that we remember that if we're not loving, then it doesn't matter how much we say that we're forgiving our family, our friends. It doesn't matter how much we say that we are persevering, that we are being truthful, that we have integrity. It doesn't matter. If we're not loving our neighbor, if we're not loving our family members, the people we meet on the street, then we're not doing any of those other things correctly. So until we learn to love ourselves, others, God, then we can never truly reach that glory of the meaning God had for humans, unless we are actually every day pursuing love to the fullest of ourselves.